There you are. Been waiting for you. I'm CharLee Simons. This is Do Not Talk, talking about two things you're never supposed to talk about: politics and religion. One decides what life is going to be like here on earth, the other one decides what it's going to be like when we leave it. The silent majority has finally found its voice. Now it just needs to get louder. I was with several thousand of the formerly silent majority at the California State Capitol building yesterday. It was the No on AB 495 rally with Pastor Jack Hibbs from Chino Hills Calvary Baptist, or Calvary Chapel. I don't want to say they're Baptist, but it doesn't matter if they are, as long as they're following God. I don't care. I'm just not a denominations guy personally, even though I attend a Baptist church. But as my pastor says, much to his distress, I'm the first one to say, yes, I attend a Baptist church, but no, I'm not a Baptist. I'm a follower of Christ Jesus. So there were thousands of us at the Capitol building yesterday, and I'm so glad I was there. And there's this wicked bill being pushed forth where I can't wait to hear what Michelle Peterson has to say about it. She's my guest today. No on AB 495. Look it up. You'll see it on my Rumble channel right now. I was live from the rally. You can catch the guest speakers there that they had, some extraordinary ones. It was a monumental thing when the national press is reporting on thousands showing up, protesting against this wicked bill that allows any clown to come pick up your child from school, from daycare. They can download the form, fill it out, go, yeah, I'm caretaker for what's their faces. They couldn't pick up little Sally today, so I'm here. They're trying to make it law to where you can get away with that. Imagine what's going to happen. Just imagine. Who comes up with that? Why would they even think of something like that? You know what it has to do with? Illegals. It all actually had to do more with that than anything else, I believe. That and the LGBTQ community, which I don't really call them that. I call them what they are, the homo mafia. They will dox you. They will do everything they can to destroy you if you dare to speak out against them. I know. I've told you stories. If you watch this show for any length of time, you've heard them about how wicked they are and violent. They were the first ones to always throw out the death threats anytime I dared to speak up against what they were doing. Pride Month, because of a video I posted about that and the lie of it all. Meta took down every one of my Facebook pages about a month and a half ago, and my Instagram. Gone. 40,000 people. CharLee's out of their life. What happened to CharLee? I don't know. I haven't had an old friend of mine text me. Did I say something or do something wrong? Did you block me? No. But come on. You don't know me by now? It can't offend me. No, I did not block you. They deleted every one of my pages. So it's been tough promoting the show now. I've noticed my numbers have dropped dramatically on Rumble, rumble.com/do-not-talk. But you can help me. You can help me fix that. One, by changing the algorithms on Rumble, by liking this channel right now, liking this show. Go ahead, please. By hitting that like button, it breaks down the old algorithm thing. I don't even know how it works. I don't pretend to know, but everybody's saying get people to like your show, and it will show up in search engines and so on. Okay, please like the show. And if you want to find my shows anywhere, regardless of what happens in social media, you can always do it at my website, charleesimons.com. CharLeeSimons.com, charleesimons.com. You can contact me there. You can even book a guest slot on the show. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Never been on a podcast? You always thought it might be kind of fun? Believe me, I'm easy to talk to. I don't really do I don't do interviews. I have conversations. So you can also buy things at my merch store. We got shirts, hats, mugs, all the usual standard fare, even a car magnet that says no woke zone. I think you'll like my little merchandise store at charleesimons.com. Please buy something there and you'll be helping this show financially, and you'll get something nice out of it. Or if you just want to give, because you just feel that way and the Lord led you to, you can find ways to do that on that website too, including venmo.com/do-not-talk. There's several other ways you can give on there. Give, Sing, Go, and so on. All at my website. So there you go. Commercial out of the way. Michelle Peterson. She never expected to become a national advocate, but when her 15-year-old child was unlawfully groomed by a 34-year-old teacher. She was thrust into a fight no parent wants to face, and after a grueling 3-year legal battle that ended up in a conviction, yes, Michelle saw firsthand the legal system's failure to protect kids from grooming and trafficking. She says failure, I think it's more not by accident. I think they're in on it. I think they're part of it. Let's get Michelle Peterson on the show right now and see what she thinks on Do Not Talk. Ready? Hit it! What's up, my sister from another mister?
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm borderline amazing. Thanks for being had. Uh, I have seen you on a couple other shows, and friends of mine have actually had you on their shows. And I'm like, son of a gun, how come I haven't contacted Michelle Peterson? I need to get her on as well. You're every bit as just beautiful and vivacious in as close as I can get to in person as you are on the TV screen. It's nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you. Um, but let's run down what happened. 15 years old, 34-year-old student. What happened? How did it unfold? What did you learn?
Yeah, so this was back in 2010, and everything seemed fine. And in October of that year, I overheard my son having a conversation on the phone, and he was extremely upset. I thought he had maybe a new girlfriend. He said, how often do you want me to call you? You know that I'm busy. I'm working 2 jobs. And then I heard him say, I'll meet in your classroom tomorrow and pick up those paintballs. And then I knocked on the door, asked him who he was talking to. And this was about 11 o'clock at night in October. And he said it was his baseball coach from the year before and a teacher at the high school. I said, why is he calling you at 11 o'clock at night? That's completely inappropriate. And
Completely. Yes.
yeah. And he just said, he was tired. He was driving home from watching Sunday Night Football. I said, again, why is he calling you? You need to hang up the phone. So he hung up the phone, and I went straight down to my computer, looked up the phone number he was talking to, and then found thousands of text messages between the two of them going all the way back to May of that year. And the teacher at this time was 34, and my son was 15 when that started. And then just to sort of give a little bit more background, I am also a physical therapist. So I was in this guy's home treating a family member at the time that he started texting my son in May of that year. And then I was also coaching softball at the same high school. So he knew me on 3 different levels as a healthcare provider, a parent, and then also as a colleague. And when these folks are good and they groom people, they don't just groom the child, they groom the family and the community as well. And then to give a little context too about what grooming is, like, you have normal grooming where you groom someone to be a CEO, you groom someone, your kids to be of good moral character. But this is unlawful grooming, whereby somebody is in a position of authority or older and they are trying to gain the trust of somebody who is younger. And typically it's to have sex with that child. But again, they tend to groom the family and the community as well. And it's no longer what we would think when we were younger, right? Is the white van syndrome. It's usually somebody that you know that is doing this, a family member, teacher, clergy, neighbor, somebody like that. It's typically not a stranger. So those are things that people need to kind of, keep in the forefront that that's what's happening currently. So anyway, after that happened, I had printed off about 3 weeks worth of text messages, and it was about a quarter inch thick. And I went to the principal the next day. Yeah, and I said, I think we have a problem. And he sat back in his chair and just kind of exasperated. And he said, I just gave him a teacher's award 2 weeks ago. So, like I said, when they groom the family, they also groom the community. So he would volunteer for everything. Everyone thought he was this great teacher, great guy. He wasn't married, lived at home with his grandmother. And so when you look back, it's kind of like the perfect unsub, from like Criminal Minds, and um, my son too at the time, and this is something I'd like to express to parents or grandparents and aunts, uncles, whatever. He just wanted this to stop and wanted to go away. So once he knew that I knew that something was off, I think he just thought that it would just stop and it would end there. But I just had this gut feeling that something was way off, and they were both denying any wrongdoing. So but looking back, hindsight's always 2020. My son was pretty withdrawn. He was tired. He wasn't sleeping well. Didn't want to get up and go to school. Wasn't doing normal activities as far as going out with friends. So while that can also be, just a teenager and some of their moodiness or whatever and hormones, I do now looking back think that it was all because of this. It was anxiety. He had gone down
Yeah.
to the
Well, of
yeah
course.
he yeah he'd gone to the nurse a few times and was complaining of a resting heart rate that was elevated. And, me being me, I said, just send him back to class. I'm sure he's fine. And she had him lay down one time for about a half hour, called me and said he has a resting heart rate of 120. So I even like took him to a cardiologist, pediatric cardiologist. Like it was a whole thing. And, looking back now, of course, that's what it was. It was just anxiety about the whole situation, not wanting to be there. But the principal that day met with both of them individually, and they both denied any wrongdoing. So there was nothing really he could do at that point. And I even asked him, I said, so as a mandatory reporter, will you be contacting Department of Children and Family Services or anything? And he said,
Right.
well, they're both denying any wrongdoing. I really can't do anything. I was, but you're Andrew's mom. You can do whatever you want. In about 4 different ways, he told me in that conversation to call DCFS because I know that he had a gut feeling as well. He said, you can call them whenever you want. If they need a place to have a meeting, they can meet here in the conference room. We'll free space up for them. And at that point, I went to one of the local churches. I wasn't attending a church at the time. I went to a local church and met with the pastor, told him what was going on. And, because this is somebody's life, it's their livelihood. You just want to make sure that what you're thinking is possibly what's happening. And I didn't want to ruin this guy's life. And he just told me, he encouraged me, he said, just
You're a
contact
better man than
DCFS,
I am because I would.
let them
I
shut
would want
down.
to ruin it. I'd want him to be out. I want him to be
Yeah,
done. I'd want him to never be able to be around children again in any kind of professional capacity, at least. That is
right.
insane. It's completely unacceptable. It's wicked, is what it is.
Yeah. And seeing at this point, I had no idea what the verbiage was, right? So I had nothing. All we had were messages back and forth. However, you could see that there were sometimes up to 20 messages coming in, and my son wouldn't respond back. Messages coming in the middle of the night, and he wouldn't respond. And then I asked him, I said, why did you finally respond? He said, well, he's a teacher, he's a coach. I felt like I had to. It's, again, somebody in a position of authority. So
Especially if your son's playing
that,
on the team, obviously, and he wants to be able to stay
yeah.
on the team.
Yeah, and he went to him initially because of a bullying incident on the baseball team, and was just looking for some help with that, right, from another male and somebody who knows the team and what's going on, and didn't want to come
Yeah.
running to his mom for the situation, right? And so, um, yeah, he just this guy just completely took advantage of that entire situation, and that's what they'll do too, is they'll try to find a weakness in that child, and a lot of times they'll go after single parent households, and I think he thought that I was still single at the time, didn't realize I had been remarried, just because I was just busy, like I was working, I was coaching, I was, parenting my son, and so I don't think he thought I was paying attention, and I sometimes tease that he had the right kid, he had the wrong family. So it took everything in me not to even go into his classroom that next morning and just have it out with him there, as opposed to going into the principal's office and talking to him and doing
Right.
this the right way and going through the right channels. Um, but at this point, we don't have anything. And my son, because I would check his phone regularly, I would check his text messages, his emails, the apps, whatever, 2 or 3 times a week. We never
You
saw
what?
one of over. He would delete the messages when they came in. So when the messages would come in from the teacher, he would delete them. So I never saw one of over 6,000 messages. And
6,000.
yeah, yeah. And so then I had to try to find somebody who could pull those messages off the phone, and found a detective in Joliet, which is about, I don't know, 12, 15 miles from here. And that's what he did. He would pull deleted messages off of electronics. And I told my son this on a Sunday night, and I said, I need your phone. This was a few weeks later. And his face just went green. And I said, is there something you need to tell me? He goes, I can't tell you. He wouldn't even look at me. And he's like, I'll talk to the detective tomorrow and to the principal. And at this point, I had a really tough conversation with him and just said, whatever it is, I said, nothing is worth taking your life over, you know. So we had this talk about suicide that, you know, you never want to have with your 16-year-old child. And he said, I'll talk to them tomorrow. So I was kind of up all night, kind of keeping vigil over his room, making sure he was okay. And we go to the principal's office the next morning, and he was in there for about 3 hours with them. And then the principal came out, and he said, you know, we're going to open up our own DCFS investigation. And he said, you were spot on with what you were thinking. And Andrew wants to tell you himself what's going on. So I went home, and he proceeded to tell me that he had wanted to make a sex video with him, and he referred to his body part as my little guy. He didn't say
Who
much
did?
more than
Who?
that. The
Hang on a second.
teacher, the
The
teacher,
teacher
yeah, the
wanted
teacher.
it. Okay.
And it was all in a text message. And I went back to the principal because he said that he'd be there the rest of the day, and if I had any questions. So I went in, and he said, so what did he tell you? And I told you. And he again put his head down. He goes, well, he didn't even tell you the worst part. He actually offered him money for oral sex, 500, 1,000, up to $1,500. And my son kept telling him no. And so, yeah, that's where we were at this point. Now, the teacher then at that point was put on paid administrative leave because of their union contracts. This is how it goes, right? And this is how it goes across the country. If something happens to one of these
He's getting
teachers,
paid to have a nice little vacation.
they're typically put on paid leave because of their contract. So he's on paid administrative leave, and I turn the phone over to our detective, and he has to take to the detective in Joliet. And so we're waiting, and he had the phone for a couple months, and Apple and iPhone had just done an upgrade, so they couldn't get the messages off the phone. He was having a hard time doing that, and had his phone for so long. And I ended up meeting a Secret Service agent through another friend of mine. Her husband at the time was a Secret Service agent, and they introduced me to one of their friends who was on a pedophile task force. So for those people who don't know, the Secret Service will help local jurisdictions with cases when they're not serving and protecting the president.
I
And
did
that's
not
what
know
this
that.
guy was doing. Yep.
Mhm.
So that's what he was doing. So I met with him, and he said, Michelle, this is too much for just one kid. They want you to just go away. It's too much work. And I said, but it's my kid. And he said, well, that's why you need to stay in their face. You need to keep going down to the state's attorney's office, you know, and keep this relevant for them, and let them know that you're an educated woman. You're not going anywhere. He goes, I'm going to give you 2 business cards. Keep one for yourself and take one down there, and tell them if they don't have the messages off the phone, you know, within the next 7 days, you're going to turn it over to the feds. He goes, I'll have them off of there in 15 minutes. And at this point, they had already taken the phone down to the Illinois State Police, and they'd had the phone for about 6 months. So we're now about 8 months after I overheard that first conversation. So almost a year after that first conversation, they've had the phone this whole time. And so when I did that and took the business card down there, we had the messages back 3 days later, which leads me to believe that they probably had the messages the whole time, and they were just sitting on them. So we end up going, my husband and I, who is my son's stepfather, went and met with 2 assistant state's attorneys at the courthouse here in town. And we live in the county seat, and the high school is in the county seat. And went down there in this huge courtroom or courthouse conference room, and big table. And they're on one side, we're on the other. And there's a stack of papers sitting in front of them. And there was an older gentleman. He said, I don't think we have enough to go on. There's too many gaps in the transcripts. And younger gentleman also concurred with that. And I said, are those the messages sitting in front of you? And they said, yes. And I said, and up until this point, I'd been pretty compliant. Like, I'd never really been in trouble, never really had been around the law or a courthouse. And they said, yes. I said, so can I see them? And they both looked at each other like they weren't expecting that question. I said, well, here's the deal. I said, that's my property, and so is the phone. So if you're doing nothing with it, I'm leaving with both here today. And so they let me see the messages, and I'm reading through them, and tears are just dripping from my face because everything that I told you was in there, where he wanted to make the video, where he offered him money and referred to his body part as my little guy. And I pushed the messages back very slowly, and then slammed my hands on the table and stood up. I said, you have got to be kidding me. I said, I looked at the older guy. I said, you have grandkids that go to this school. And the younger guy said, you're going to have kids that will go to this school. I said, you guys are okay with this guy teaching your children? And I was yelling like I have never yelled before. My husband was kicking me under the table. And I said, you kick me one more time, I'm kicking you out that door. So like all 3 men did not know what to do with me at this point.
That's my
Because like I
girl.
said,
I love it.
I've been pretty calm the whole time up until this point, and I was just
Good,
lost.
because he should have been there
Lost
screaming
it.
with you, as far as
Yeah,
I'm
I
concerned.
literally lost it.
Let me
Um,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the next day, well, that day I asked if I could meet with the state's attorney, and of course he was busy, the actual state's attorney. And so the next day I called back at 8:01 the next morning, and I introduced myself and said who I was, and I needed to meet with the state's attorney. And they said he was busy all day. I said, that's fine. I'll be in later to pick up my cell phone and the text messages, and I'm going to take it to the actual state's attorney for Illinois. And she was actually working on some sex trafficking and stuff at the time, and pedophilia stuff at the time. And so he called me back himself 15 minutes later and said he could meet with me that afternoon. And I
This was
printed
who?
off an
Who
article,
again?
the actual state's attorney for
Okay,
Grundy County,
got it.
because the other two guys were assistants. And I printed off an article where he said that he'd come back to Grundy County to protect the children and families of Grundy County. And so I took that with me. And he said he wasn't really
You
sure what
remember
was
this?
going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
He said he wasn't really sure what was going on with my case. I said, well, that's a problem. I said, you went to this high school. We actually live in the county seat where this courthouse is, where the high school is, and you have no idea what's going on with this case. So how many other cases do you not know what's going on? And then I set the article down in front of him. I said, how about we start doing this? You said you came back here to protect the children and families. Let's start doing that. And the detective the next day called me and asked me what I said to him. And so I told him. He goes, we just got 4 subpoenas we've been waiting for on other cases. So at that point, I felt like I had a target on my back, and because I mean, I was in this guy's face. It was not pretty. So that kind of set off a tumultuous relationship between the two of us. But still, at this point,
So
nothing is
be
really
it.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not. He was not. That's an elected position.
Hmm.
He was not elected. He was not put there to be your buddy. He was put
Yeah.
there to be an effective was prosecutor and attorney for the people who need protecting from very wicked
Right.
and bad people out there. This is not your buddy. So I'm
Right.
sorry he didn't like
Yeah.
you. I think it's
Well, it's
fantastic.
interesting because he was actually put into that position because the guy that was elected into that position was actually put into a judge position. So he was placed into that position, which is probably not unlike most of our elected officials, right? They're usually selected at this point, not
That's
elected.
what's happening. You're
Um,
exactly right.
yeah. So I told him, several times throughout this entire ordeal that I felt like I was stuck with him as my attorney. I reminded him, I said, you work for me. I pay my taxes. I pay your salary. So you work for
There it is.
me and I'm
Exactly.
stuck with you. So,
Stuck with you.
but at this point, like nothing happened. Like he didn't charge him with anything. Our detective actually asked for a subpoena for the teacher's cell phone, and that got denied by the state's attorney. Now, this all hinged on text messages and technology, and denied a subpoena for the cell phone. He denied a subpoena for the computer. Um, but
What the
after
hell?
some of the research I don't know, some of the research that I've done over the last few years, though, right? Some of these guys are involved. And so I don't know if he was involved. I have no idea, but it just makes me wonder,
Some of
like,
these
who
guys
is
are
he
doing the same
protecting?
activities.
Right. Who is he protecting is what I want to know. If it wasn't him, then who? Because it just made no sense. So anyway, I leave there. Nothing is really happening at this point, and they have the messages back. And then a few months later, the principal calls me, and I go down and meet with him. And he said, I've been trying to get them to subpoena his personnel file, and they're not doing it. So I go back down to the state's attorney's office, and I asked him to subpoena the personnel file. And he was so mad at me. And he's like, well, what could possibly be in there that we would need? And I said, what skin is it off of your back? Can you just get it? So he subpoenas the personnel file, and then the attorneys at the school would not release it to him until I came down and signed off on it. And they used the HIPAA law, saying because my son's name was all over this personnel file and he was a minor. So the principal, who had been a counselor before, had a meeting with the teacher, the union rep, and the superintendent before they let him go on leave. And he asked him straight up, did you ever offer him money for oral sex? Did you want to make a sex video? And did you refer to his body part as my little guy? And he said he put his head down, shook his head in affirmation, and said yes. Documented,
He
signed by
admitted it
him. So I signed off on it. I'm
because
like,
he
we
didn't know
got
what
him.
kind of evidence you had against
So,
him.
right. So I gave the principal a big hug, went right back down to the state's attorney's office and told him what was in there. And he was mad. He's like, so why'd they let you see this? I said, because of HIPAA law, my son's a minor. He goes, they didn't have to do that. I said, honestly, I think they let me see it because I've been having so much trouble down here with you and you won't do anything about this case. And if I didn't see it in their office, I would have never known what was in there. So if he's not arrested in the next 7 days, I'm going to have every major news station on your front lawn. So he waited the full 7 days, and then he indicted him. And then we went status hearing after status hearing
He
after status
actually
hearing.
waited all 7 days.
He did. Yep. Yep.
What a complete passive
So,
aggressive little tick. Public
yep.
servant.
Yep. Yep.
Let,
100%.
let me get your
So,
thoughts on this. This has been my attitude and my experience and what I've noticed. If your son had been your daughter and everything was exactly the same, only it was a heterosexual teacher hitting on your daughter and doing all these things, the community would be outraged.
yep.
But
It would have been totally different.
because it's a boy, and especially having to do with a homosexual relationship, which you're never supposed to talk about or never supposed to say anything against, because you don't want people calling you a homophobe or whatever else stupid term they throw at you. People are such cowards. If it were a girl, the attitude would have been
Yep.
completely different in the courts, in the law enforcement, with the principal at the school would have been completely different. But because it's a boy, and I've heard people say this, oh, boys are all horny anyway. They just love it. It's exciting. You know, the Van Halen song, Hot for Teacher. It's
Right.
exciting. It's like, oh, way to go. Oh, man, you bagged a teacher. That's exciting. That's awesome. Oh, and they're homosexual. Oh, well, huh. But the
Right.
attitude is
You know
because it's
what's
a male child seems to be very
Mhm.
different from when if it's a female child. Have you noticed that?
Yep. Oh, yeah. And you can even see that even on Facebook posts, like when it's a female teacher going after a male, so many comments from men are so
Oh,
ignorant,
high
like, "Oh
five.
my god, she's hot. If that would have happened to me, I would have never gotten
Yeah,
a teacher like that." I'm like, "What is wrong with you people? Like, this
I
is a
don't know.
child, right?"
It's
I
sick.
just don't understand. And, it took a lot for my son to even wanna come forward, and he didn't wanna come forward and have to face all of this and go to trial, and he's like, "Mom, I don't know if I wanna do this," 'cause, he just wanted this guy to leave him alone, and I said, "Well, here's the thing, Andrew." I said, "The stuff that he is texting you, you're not the first." And I said, "If we don't do something about it,
And
then there's
won't be
gonna
the
be another
last.
one."
Yes,
I said, "So what
exactly.
about the next kid? What if the next
Right.
kid needs the money?" And I said, "So we have 3 boys that live across the street and 4 that live down the street from us." I said, "If something happens to one of them and you could have stopped it, how do you face their parents?" So I sent him to bed that night, and he went to bed and got up the next morning, and he said, "Okay, I'm not doing it for you, and I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for those guys across the street and the ones down the street." So that's the thing. And I told him all along, I said, "Andrew," I said, "God put this in our laps for a reason." I said, "He knew that we would take care of it." I said, "So we can't let this go." And, um, like I said, we were going status hearing after status hearing after status hearing all through 2011, 2012. And then we finally voted in a new state's attorney who took office in January of 2013. And the detective at that time went and met with him and said, "Hey, there's this case that's been hanging out there. You need to go after this case. It's been out there for 2.5 years now." So he met with me and my son and my
Thank
husband
God for him.
and said, yeah, he
Thank
goes,
God
"I
for
think
that
we're going to
law
have to actually take
enforcement
a plea
officer.
deal." Yeah. But he said, "I think we're going to have to take a plea deal at this point because they're going to say that you can't remember everything that happened. It's been too long. There's too many gaps in the transcripts."
That's another thing
So
they
I
do,
was,
don't they? When they don't really want to
yep.
address it, they just let it sit
Yeah.
there, and then later on they go, "Oh well, can't do anything about it now. Statute of
Yeah. I
limitations or
was
whatever else."
ticked. Right. But remember, this was a new state's attorney. So that had sat there for 2.5 years when he got on the case. And so I was not happy because this guy would still be able to teach. He wouldn't have to register as a sex offender. He'd just have a slap on the wrist and have to pay a fine. So we go to court in August of 2013. And um, by the grace of God, his hand was all over this because he decided he wanted to take it to trial. And they said that that never happens. So he decides he wants to take it to trial. The judge was pissed. He lit up his attorney and said, that we had this young man home from school because now at this point, my son turned 19 that summer. So he had already finished his first year of college and he was going to school in New Jersey. And so he said, now we got to bring him back home from school. And he's like, "You've dragged this family out for 2.5 years." He's like, "This is absolutely ridiculous." Like he was so ticked. So not only did this guy decide he wants to take it to trial, but he opted for a bench trial as opposed to a jury trial with the same judge that he just pissed off. Makes no
Oh,
sense, but
really?
God.
Oh, well, wait a minute.
Right,
Maybe that's a good thing.
right.
Oh,
Right. So
wow.
it was God, the whole his hand. when you look back over this whole thing, his hand was all over it because I couldn't figure out for the life of me why this was taking so long. Like literally 3 years. Like it just made no sense. But then after that happened, we met with the state's attorney and his first assist a few days later. And his first assist, he said, there's a new law that just came into play in Illinois just last month, and it's a grooming law. And he explained to us what grooming was, and he said everything that's in this law is everything that he did to you, your family, and to this community. He goes, we're going to go after that law, but there's no precedent set. There's no convictions in the United States yet.
Good. We'll
And
be the
he's like, so
first.
it's going to be difficult. Yeah, he's like, it's going to be difficult to get. So we go to court in October of 2013, and my son was on the stand for 4.5 hours between the two sides. And we ended up getting the very first unlawful grooming conviction in the United States, as well as solicitation of a minor.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah.
Father.
Yes. Yes. Amen. But just so people know, like, that's not the end of it, right? Because when these guys are good, they make these kids feel bad for them. My son felt like he cost him his job. He felt like he cost him his livelihood. He was spiraling out of control. He went back to school, was drinking, was not doing well. And I'd had him in counseling the whole time from high school. And then, the counselor in high school only had him in counseling for about 6 to 8 weeks. And he discharged him. I said, what are you doing? He goes, I think he's fine. I'm like, he's not fine. I'm like, I can tell you my son is not fine. And he's like, my son's very smart. So he was saying all the right things to be able to get out of going to counseling, because who wants to do that? Especially, when you're 17 years old. And so, so he discharged him, but he was not ready. So when he was away at school, it was not a good situation, and ended up getting the school involved. And then they helped get him into counseling while he was out there as well. And then, and the teacher ended up only doing 30 days in jail. He paid like a $2,700 fine, had to register as a sex offender, but for only 10 years. So as of last May, he's no longer on the sex offender registry, May of 24. And then, but he can never teach again. So that was my ultimate goal, is not to be able to teach ever again. But now fast forward to January of 23, and I went to one of the Reawaken tours, and it was in Nashville. And I had already previously met General Flynn through some of the Reawakens and through some other friends. And I'm at
I
a
went to
VIP
one of the ones
dinner.
they did out here in California. I
Yeah,
loved
and
it.
I went to a VIP dinner the day before it started and met a trafficking investigator named Amy Coelho. She's from Texas. I'm from Illinois, and we're at a Reawaken in Nashville. And she starts telling me about some cases she'd been working on. And one of them that she had just finished up was a 10-year-long case. It was the La Luz del Mundo case out of California. It's a church cult. So they're in 47 different countries. And she said that they busted 23 different sex trafficking cells between Mexico and California. But it's where the women in the church prepare the kids in the church for the men in the church. And then she was telling me about another. Yeah, you heard that right. And it's actually a Netflix documentary series right now. You can go on Netflix and look up La Luz del Mundo, and it's on there, the documentary. But then she started telling me about one of her other cases, a Larry Nassar gymnast, and then another couple high-profile cases. And so I started telling her about my case here in Illinois, thinking in my head, I'm like, well, I'll tell her about my measly little case in Illinois, after hearing her stories. So I started to tell her, and she goes, hold on, are you from Illinois? And I said, yes. And she said, when was it? I said, 2013. He was sentenced in 2014. And she grabbed my arm and got tears in her eyes. She goes, I need to get a picture with you and send this to my team. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, we use your case for every trafficking case we bust, including the ones I just told you about, because you have the only grooming conviction in the United States, even 10 years later. And so she's like,
Which is a sad
and then I told her
commentary,
the
by
whole,
the way.
right. So then I told her the whole story, and she's like, Michelle, she was like, your tenacity and your son's willingness to come forward, you guys have saved thousands of lives. And we were both bawling because, you just don't ever realize that something that you did 10 years later would have such a profound impact. And I asked her, and she's also a paralegal, and I said, do you think that they could have used this for the Ghislaine Maxwell Jeffrey Epstein trials? And she's like, I'd have to look at the case file. She goes, but there's nothing else they could have used. You have the only grooming conviction in the United States. And so she said, I think the reason you would do those is because people are taking plea deals. So they're taking a plea bargain and they're getting
Right.
out. And
Exactly.
so she's like, we need to get a law put in
Because
place where
nobody
they
wants
can't
that
take a plea deal.
attention. School district doesn't want that attention. The school doesn't want that attention. The principal
Right.
doesn't want that attention. The law enforcement that's doing nothing doesn't want that attention. Yeah, of course. Of course, I'll plea out.
So that's what she thought was going on. And so I started telling General Flynn about what was going on, and he wasn't really getting the gravity of the case because he was so busy with the Reawaken. But he's like, I want to introduce you to my sister Mary Flynn O'Neill. She's the CEO of America's Future, and Mary happened to be at this Reawaken. She hadn't been at any others. Again, hand of God, right? And so I started telling her about my case, and she said, "Well, first of all, can you get me your case because we have a case going on right now in Tennessee that I really need that." And I said, "Sure." So I got that to her the following week, but then she introduced me to a paralegal out of Florida named Allie Hopper. Now, Allie's been doing congressional hearings recently because she's been doing some border work and trafficking work. But at this point, I mean, she was a paralegal. She started looking into the criminal code in Florida and soon realized that they didn't have a grooming law in place in Florida. So then we started looking at other states, and we realized very soon that Illinois was the only state that had a grooming law. So nothing happened to these pedophiles until they actually defiled a child. And so we took a step back, and then she started talking
And
to
then
some reps
unless
and
there's
senators,
physical
knocking on
evidence, it's
doors.
your word against them.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
tough.
Yep. So she
And
started knocking
like I
on
said,
doors in Tallahassee.
you're surrounded by people who don't want the publicity, don't want that kind of attention, especially the
Right.
teachers'
Right.
unions.
Right. Right. The unions are,
The
yeah, they're
worst.
not in favor of the kids, that's for sure.
No.
But she went and knocked on some doors in Tallahassee and started getting some reps and senators to pay attention. I flew down there and spoke at a GOP hearing or a GOP meeting that they had, like an event, and one of the senators was there, and so he took me backstage and wanted to hear the whole story. And then at that point, he was in, and so he sponsored this bill, and that was, I think it was actually Representative Bankston in Florida, and as of last April, they now have a grooming law in Florida. And then we started working with another representative, Mark Thompson, out of Iowa. And so now Mark Thompson sponsored that bill and got that passed in Iowa. And it passed the House and the Senate unanimously. So now Iowa has a grooming law. And then it wasn't too much longer after that that Arizona had an issue with a softball coach grooming one of the girls. And they ended up getting a grooming law put in place in Arizona. And then there was another mom in Georgia who has been trying to get a grooming law put in place in Georgia for 3 years because her daughter had been groomed and molested by a YMCA gymnastics coach, and she was having trouble getting the law passed there. But once it passed in these other 3 states, then Georgia's law passed, and then just this year, Montana and Louisiana now have a grooming law in place too. So that's why I'm going on all of these podcasts to try to get a rep or a senator to sponsor this bill in their state so we can get a grooming law put in place in all 50 states.
You know who's the one to talk to here in California? Is Shannon Grove. I don't know if you're
Shannon
going to get
Grove.
any kind of traction with anyone else, but she's out of Bakersfield, my hometown. She is
You
a
know
pit
her by
bull.
chance?
Shannon Grove, ShanNNON, Shannon Grove, Grove. Extraordinary. I love her. She was just at that
Do you
rally.
know her by chance?
I don't know her personally. I'd like to. No, that's not true. I have met her, but I don't know her well. I don't have her number or anything. Otherwise, I would certainly do that. I'd get you on with
Well,
her
if
for
anybody
everything.
out there
I'd love to have
does
her on.
know her,
Yeah,
yeah, if anybody out there does know her personally,
yeah.
that's where we have the most luck is if somebody knows somebody personally where they can text them or call them, send them to my website, which is just my name, michellepeterson.org. And then there's a contact page up there. They can email me. It goes directly to my email, and I will reach back out to them and get a hold of them right away and get a hold of that rep, so it's so important that that happens. And then there's other things too that parents can do now that we didn't have then. There's an app, there's like a Bark app, BARK, or a Bark phone. If you go on my website, there's a link on there, but you can actually get all messages that go in and out of your kids' phones onto your phone, or you
Wow.
can set it up for certain keywords. So that way, like, and then parents, take your kids' phones at night. If I would have taken his phone at night, I would have seen these messages coming in. So there's so many things that you could do that I didn't do. And then also pay attention to your
I'd take
kids
it next
playing
step
games
further. I
online.
think you can get yourself a phone when you turn 18. Other than that, no, you're not doing that because there's
Yeah,
too many wicked things that are easily accessible on that phone.
right. The
And
nice
we're
thing
seeing
about this
the
Bark
results of it.
phone Yeah, the nice thing about the Bark phone is you can set it up so they can only call you or grandparents or like a best friend. It has a GPS on it that can never be turned off. You know how they can turn off like Life 360? They can't turn it off on this phone. And then you can set it up for different keywords. So you're not getting every single text message. So you can put it up for like body parts, cuss words, that sort of thing. So those are the messages that go in and out of your phone or slang words. So, but yeah, I think there's so much more out there that parents could be doing. And then just paying attention to your kids online as well. Roblox and, any online gaming system, they're going into those gaming systems. They're going into all the apps, and people think they're only going into like Snapchat and those sorts of things, but they're actually going into like Bible apps, and they're messaging kids on Bible apps. So you just got to
You
make sure you're
serious?
watching
No
all of it.
kidding.
Yeah. Yeah. If
You
there's an app
mentioned
that
you
has a
mentioned gaming.
messaging,
I did not know how prevalent nudity and actual porn is in those games. If you get to the next level,
right.
I had no idea. There are. This is all part of the devil's plan. You
Yep.
take them out young.
Yep.
You make
They're
everything seem
coming after our
acceptable.
kids.
It's just another lifestyle choice. That's all it is. Well, I'm sorry. Why don't you make your mind? I could have sworn you said it's not a choice. You were born that way. Which is it? Is it a choice or isn't it? But that's all they present
Right.
it to make it normal, make it okay. And pedophiles, guess what jobs they want to have? Jobs that put them around the children. And then you're going to tell me they're not
Yep.
grooming? Look what happened to the Boy Scouts of America. That was an extraordinary
Hmm.
organization. And then in the 90s, this was all Bill Clinton crap, where they started saying,
Yep.
well, we're going to sue you because you won't allow homosexual scout leaders. No, we're not, because we're afraid they might take advantage of being around boys all the time. Well, look what happened when they were forced to start doing that. Where's the Boy Scouts of America now? Done, gone, got destroyed, got ruined. All part of the plan. Ruin the family, ruin
Yep.
what's biblically acceptable when it comes to sexual relationships. Ruin it. I had one of my posts on Facebook before they finally took down everything was about Romans chapter 1. All I did was quote scripture. Freaked them out. They don't want to hear it. They run, they repel from it. As a matter of fact, they'll turn, like Jesus said, casting pearls before swine, they'll turn and rend your flesh. It's I'm done with it. Jesus didn't say it'd be better for you if you chose to put a heavy millstone around your neck and to cast yourself into the sea. That's not what he said. It'd be better for you if it were to
Mhm.
be done to you. I'm
Yep.
done. I'm sick of it. I'm furious.
Hmm.
I'm livid. My campaign slogan, if I ever run for office, is make pedophiles scared again. Yeah. Oh, you want to drive them back into the closet? Yes. But I want it more than that. I want them done. I
Or
want them to
extinct
stop
again.
this lifestyle. There's nothing normal about it. There's nothing good about it. You're
Yep.
destroying children. You're destroying their minds. You're destroying their bodies. And the only healing there
Yep.
that actually can ever come of that is through Christ Jesus. So it is eroding and destroying society as we know it. And if that sounds a little too harsh for people, including my own fellow Christians, open up your Bible right now and read Romans chapter 1 and get back to me.
Yep.
Michelle, I'm
Yeah.
so
I
sick
mean,
of it. This infuriates me and it really irritates me too with your case because I know good and well that, again, if your son would have been a daughter, oh, they'd be all outraged. But because it was a
it would be
boy,
different. Right. Right. Yeah,
I
and that's
am
the
with
thing is
you.
they don't even realize like how much it's actually put a strain on him, our relationship,
Of
all of
course.
it,
Of
because
course.
he never even had to touch him for it to have a huge impact, profound impact on him and our family. But now God is using all of that for good. So, God walks you through it and takes you through it so you can actually be used on the other side of it and do something good with it. And that's where I'm at this point is I just feel like this is now my calling. This is, my assignment from God is that I have to get this done. And I'm
And you
not
were
going
a
to step
single mom
small
at the
because
time?
I have a law.
Were you a single mom at
No,
the time?
no, not at the time. Not at the
Okay.
time. The teacher thought I was. There were 2 other boys that we ended up finding out about that he
But
was,
working, I'm
also
sure you
doing
were
this to.
working. You had to
I
support the
was.
family.
Yep, yep, I
But
was
yet you
working,
did
but
all
the
this.
2 boys. Yep, the
But
other 2
yet you
boys
oh,
didn't
you
come
have
from
2 boys?
single-parent households. No,
Say
no,
it
no.
again?
The other 2 boys there were 2 boys that we thought that we knew that he started doing this to that we found out about. they came from single parent households, and that all three boys looked very similar. So he did go after, like I said, he thought that I was still single at the time, and I was not. So he was targeting single parent households, and that's what they'll do as well. They try
because they're
to
distracted.
capitalize. They try to capitalize on that, and they try to
Yeah.
capitalize on the vulnerability of a woman. And again, I just feel like he didn't know his victim very well, because I am not one who's going to back down ever. And I feel like God has been preparing me for this my entire life. I was played softball at a very high level in college, and I've always been competitive. I don't step on the field to lose. I come on to win, and I do that in almost every aspect of my life. And so I don't take no for an answer very well. And that's the one thing too that Amy said that I did. She said, Michelle, most parents just give up when they get told no by authority. And she said, you didn't do that. You kept finding different ways to come back at them, and you'd find another way. They tell you no here, you'd swerve right. They tell you no there, you'd swerve left. And she said, most parents don't do that. And she said,
No,
we were watching your
they
case
can't.
far, and she said,
They're kind of busy trying to
we
put
watched
food
it
on
go
the
through the
table,
appellate
and
court. Right.
gee whiz.
Right. I mean, I was, taking time off work to make every status hearing every month. I was always there and always present. And but so what we're trying to do now, she said she wants to call it Andrew's Law, and it's an amendment to the current grooming law here in Illinois. And what it will do is make it so that somebody charged with grooming and or trafficking would not be able to take a plea deal, so no plea bargains. It would also increase the sex offender registry to include places of businesses that are privately owned, and also make it so that the sex offender registry would be lifelong and not just for 10 years. So it'd have those three different caveats in there. I do have a federal representative from Indiana, Representative Houchin, and she is actually wanting to sponsor this at the federal level. There is a federal grooming law, but it's an adjunct to a current charge. So they have to be charged with something else for them to get a grooming charge. So we're trying to do a standalone grooming charge. So if they do this across state lines, they could be charged with grooming. So she is sponsoring that bill, and I just finished actually typing that up yesterday, and so I'm going to hopefully get that to them first thing tomorrow morning. And I'm really hoping, and I am manifesting, that President Trump will sign that into law.
Yes.
And and so that's what really needs to happen at this point, because we can't have them taking plea deals. It's been proven that pedophiles
No.
cannot be
So
reformed.
no one ever knows.
Um,
Never sees the light of day.
no,
You're right.
so and I actually made it the bill very similar to the Montana grooming law. So Montana pulled no punches. So if anybody out there wants to take a look at House Bill 82 with Montana, it's also on my website. At the top, if you go under Andrew's Law, under that tab, I have all the current laws are in there that we have currently. But Montana, if you are 18 and over and you groom a child that is 12 years of age or younger, it's 100 years in prison, no chance of parole for the first 25. And if you get out at 25 years, it's a lifelong satellite surveillance. And then if you groom a child that is 16 years of age or younger, it could be 4 to no chance of parole,
Thank you,
satellite surveillance
Lord.
for life, and a
Oh, thank you,
lifelong sex
Lord.
offender registry. Yes. So that needs to be model legislation. And you're right. They
Forget
want to make this
Texas. May God
another,
bless Montana. That's awesome.
right, right. And they want to make this another, form of gender, right? So you have the LGBTQ community and the plus. The plus is pedophilia. So they want to make that normal, and they're calling it age gap love or minor attracted people. And this is being terms that are being coined by the World Economic Forum with Klaus Schwab and
That age gap
Yuval Noah
law, by the way,
Harari.
they did pass here in California. For anyone who doesn't know what
Yeah,
she's talking about, to where literally a kid 10 years younger than an adult, you have a sexual relationship with them, you don't have to register as a sex offender, and it's classified as a misdemeanor instead of a felony now in
right,
California.
right.
That's
So we
Gavin
need
Newsom
somebody to
right there.
sponsor
That's
this
Gavin
grooming
Newsom and
law
Senator Scott
in,
Wiener
in
from San
California.
Francisco. What's that?
And so we needed somebody to sponsor this grooming law in California for sure. So if we can get a hold of Shannon Grove,
Santa
anybody
Grove.
out there who knows her, please get a hold of me through my website.
She's like
Yeah,
you.
and
You'll like her. She'll like
yeah.
you. Yeah, she
Well, we're
doesn't let
actually going to be
go.
in California this weekend. We're going to be in Oxnard, California this weekend with America's Future.
Yes, you
So Friday
are.
night and Saturday we'll be in Oxnard, California.
And this is with
Some of the
Mary
names
Flynn
of the
O'Neill.
church.
Mary Flynn
It
O'Neill
is,
and
yeah.
General
And
Michael
General
Flynn.
Flynn will be there.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
wish I
Lara
could be
Logan
there. I
will be
still want to
there.
be there. Man.
Yeah, Lara
Really.
Logan,
Yes, Laura Logan.
Mike
Yeah.
Smith from Out of Shadows, Liz Crokin will be there, CharLee Rodas, Allie Hopper will be there. So
That's
we're all there
America's
to try to
future.
wake people up.
That's America's future.
AmericasFuture.net.
Yes, .net. That's it.
Yep,
There it is. If you
yep.
want all the information, you're in Southern California, and that's coming up this weekend, isn't it? This
It
coming
is, and
weekend.
it's
Yeah.
free. So it's Friday night starting
Yeah.
at 6 o'clock, I think, and it goes to like 9. And then Saturday all day, we have sessions all day on Saturday, education for people to let them learn about this. You can also go on my website. Um, it's michellepeterson.org. And there's actually another, I'm just looking at it now. We have another event that's actually coming up to end human trafficking and transhumanism, and that's going to be with Team Iowa, and it's going to be in Ankeny, and that is on September 13th. So if anybody's interested in that, that's there as well. And then I'm also organizing an event at my church here in Sheridan, Illinois, and it's Light into Darkness, and I have Kathy O'Brien will be there with us, and Hope Beryl Green,
Uh,
Lynn's Piper Loomis, Amy Coelho is coming in. We have a local guy that's coming in who has a shop called Ink 180 in Oswego, Illinois, and his mission is to actually cover up trafficking tattoos. He does that for free, so whatever tattoo they want, he will cover up their trafficking tattoo, because they do brand these girls. They'll brand the boys. So they give them tattoos. Sometimes it's on the inside of their lip, sometimes the inside of their arm, sometimes on their hip. But he will give them a tattoo and cover that up so that they no longer have to look at their trafficking tattoo. And then Pastor Kevin Garner, who's the pastor of our church, he will also be speaking that day. And then because I'm presenting that day as well, I actually reached out to Ann Vandersteel to see if she would come in and MC this for us. So Ann Vandersteel will be there MCing the event for us as well.
oh,
And then,
congratulations. That's cool.
yeah, it's going to be amazing. And then the event though in this weekend in California, it's in Oxnard, and it's at Embrace Church. So Embrace Church in Oxnard, and again, it starts Friday night. Doors open at 5, starts at 5:30, it looks like, and goes till about 9 o'clock, and then all day Saturday,
I so
starting at
wanted
nine
to be
o'clock.
there. They actually invited me. I was going to be part of the media team in the back, and then I went and had a stroke a little over a month ago. It's just
Oh,
kind of
oh,
slowed me
I'm
down and
sorry.
screwed me up for a little bit. That's all right. I'm coming back better than ever. As a matter of fact,
Good. You seem to be doing well.
I
So,
am. My face isn't all droopy anymore. I couldn't use my hand.
oh, that's good.
It jacked me up pretty good. I was in the hospital for
Yeah,
5 days, but the Lord is bringing me back and restoring me. I know that, and no, I did not take the shot.
that's great. Yeah,
I've had people
that's
ask me
good.
that. Did you take the
I know.
shot?
Well, people
No,
forget,
I did not
we
take
did
the
have
shot. I
strokes
stood
before.
against it boldly and loudly. I got
Right.
pretty much decapitated on social media because I stood against it so strongly. But that's another show for another
Right.
time. I admire you so much. I love mama bears. I got a little place in
Thank
my
you.
heart for mama bears. I love them. I'm just
Thank
waiting for
you.
the papa bears to start stepping up
I
instead of
know. And I made a
hiding.
comment about that at church one day, and I kind of got my head taken off because the guys were all like, "We're right here." I'm like, "Okay, but we need you standing
I
with
don't
us
see you
and
at the
going to
school
the
board
board
meetings.
meetings and being
I
there."
don't see you at city council meetings. I don't
That
see
was
you
my
at
point.
super.
Right.
What's that?
And that was my point. We started going to all these school board meetings during COVID, trying to get the masks off these kids, and you'd see one or two guys, and it was the rest moms that were all there.
I know. I
So,
know because I
and
was
that,
showing up at those
yeah,
and I was reporting on them when I was on the radio. One of the things that got me fired.
yeah.
Actually, what really got me fired from that
Congratulations.
radio station. Yeah, thank you. One of the things that got me fired from my last radio station was I went on the air and talking about COVID. I said, "Hey, if you're interested in dying, just check yourself into the hospital. They'll make sure it happens." That was with the whole remdesivir
It's
thing and
so
all that
sad.
crap going on.
Right.
But anyway, uh, you are awesome. You're one of my new heroes. You're on my list of people that I want to keep in touch with and keep in my life. And I want you to count on me anytime. I'd be glad to help
Thank
you
you.
any way that I possibly can. I'm now on your team. Okay, Michelle. So any of these events you were talking about, we can find them at your website, which is Michelle with 2 L's, Michelle, and then it's Peterson PETERSON.org, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Anything else before we say goodbye?
The only thing I want to say is to parents, make sure you fight for your kids. Don't give up on them. Keep fighting for them, let them know that they are worth it and they are worth fighting for. And even when they don't want to come forward and it seems so dark, just be the strength and the wind beneath their wings, right? And lift them up and let them know that you have them and that they can get through whatever this is, because it's not about them. It's about the next kid. So, yeah.
I don't think anybody could say anything better. Thank you, my friend. It was a pleasure and an honor getting to meet you. And thanks for being on my show.
Thank you. Thank you for.
I cut her off just as she was saying thank you. Rude. I know. It was an accident. I'm not at home. I'm not in my usual studio, obviously. I got dogs coming in and out. Every time you see that curtain move, that's another dog. I got 3 of them here in the room with me. I'm a dog guy. All right. Anyway, there you got your marching orders. MichellePeterson.org. Please check that out. Please help if you can. Get involved. You know what? I meant to ask her and I completely forgot. Financially, how's she doing? Look what she went through. I don't know if she ever had to have if she had to pay for any kind of legal representation or anything, but none of this was cheap. She sacrificed everything to go after this villain who was going after her own son. How's she doing financially now? Wish I would have asked her. I have to have her on again. Or you can contact her through her website. You can contact me too, CharLeeSimons.com. I would love it if you did. And you can book your own guest slot on the show if you like. I'm opening it up to anybody. Just for the heck of it. Why not? You can schedule right there at my website, CharLeeSimons.com. And you can buy merchandise in my merchandise store. You can help me that way, help this show grow. Here comes another dog. At CharLeeSimons.com, buy some merchandise in the merch store or give financially. You can help too, especially Venmo.com/do-not-talk. May God bless you and keep you. May God bless America. But most importantly, America, bless God